Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing the June 30th to July 1st Godfest that is coming to North America on Saturday or tomorrow. So, as with all Godfest, they will have disclosed rolling rates, which means we will be able to see exactly what are the chances of rolling a particular card. So this gives players both the chances to be informed as well as basically make the right decision as whether or not they should be rolling, which is done on a case-by-case basis based on your individual monster box. But for the most part, this upcoming Godfest is quite lackluster. We could probably just almost stop the video now and say don't roll. It is not a good time. And that is because there is no increased, special increased rolling rates for any Godfest exclusive. It doesn't feature anything particularly amazing. The lineup and the Pantheon cards feature are also kind of meh, so it is not that great of a time. And in all honesty, you're better off saving your magic stones and for what quite possibly could be a Super Godfest coming in the near future. Again, speculation, but again, this is not a good event, so I would honestly not be rolling here. But for the sake of creating content and this video, I will be reviewing the two new Odin, like Blue Odin and Red Odin evolutions that are coming or have come out or are coming out in Japan, as well as kind of just touching base upon the Mesopotamian series. So basically with all Godfest now, if a card is listed under the not available section, they will be unable to be rolled. So essentially all 6-star or 7-star Godfest exclusives should have around a 0.6 rolling rate. Again, this can vary from Godfest to Godfest, so again, just check in game to see the exact amount that is being posted. But again, this is kind of a mediocre lineup and it's not that exciting. And then one, I guess, interesting note is that Amino and Dark Kali have not been featured for the second time in a row. Sure, I like keeping track of those things. I don't know why. It's more so because when I'm copy pasting my icons, it just shows me who was still staying in not available section. I think Amino's record was 3 in a row of never being featured. But regardless, let's focus on the Mega Awoken Odins. So the Odins like Red and Blue and Green Odin are some of the oldest cards in Puzzle and Dragons, but unfortunately Green Odin was shafted hard because it's a 5-star Godfest exclusive, but ironically he's probably the most valuable for his weapon assist form. But Red and Blue Odin are now able to gain these Mega Awoken evolutions. So Mega Awoken evolutions are restricted to 6-star Godfest exclusives, and they will dramatically change their active skill, their leader's skill, their awakenings, and as well as making them become animated, as well as beefier weighted stats. So in general, these are massive buffs, and at this point in time, we've only had the Blue and Green Sonya receive these Mega Awoken evolutions, and they were quite exciting. Unfortunately, the Odins, while reasonably strong, are probably not going to make as big of a splash overall, just because they're a little more situational and niche for the most part. It's challenging to justify their usage as a sub or as an inherit, along with the fact that their leader skill, while reasonable, is not going to be game-changing overall. So I want to kind of just break each of them down piece by piece, and both Red and Blue have the exact same awakenings, and they function the exact same way, except you can replace the word blue with red whenever you read either of these cards. So in terms of their active skills, both Odins basically are double orb changers that break hard orbs, as well as producing +2 combo count. So basically they're going to be flooding the board with their respective primary element, as well as giving yourself 2 additional combos. Now, this active skill has the same 12-turn cooldown as Mary, so essentially we can just view them as you having a Mary-style active skill for their respective colors. So it's not a terrible active skill, but the main drawback is this type of active skill tends to function best on the monocolored teams. So essentially, if you're not running mono blue or mono red, it's going to be a little hard to justify these active skills because it's hard to use on say Rainbow Claws, obviously doesn't work, or even combo based heavy teams, because there will be too many of those one particular orbs, which can make it challenging to break apart and kind of just reorganize overall. So with that being said, that is a bit of a drawback, and because of that, it's going to make it a little harder for them to be used as a sub. Now, for the most part, even though Red Odin's active skill may not be necessarily helpful, the fact that he doesn't have his terrible base active skill from before, it was reasonable before, now it's been eclipsed overall for the most part, so it's kind of a little buff, and it's only a 12-turn, not 15-turn cooldown for Red Odin, but Blue Odin's active skill becomes significantly longer, so again, just keep in mind where you're planning to actually use these cards. Now, as a leader, this is where a lot of their focus will be, because they are able to form essentially a team of 156.25 times attack and just no bonus health or recovery multipliers, but they have a nearly unconditional 43.75% damage reduction. So damage reduction is a great thing. Basically, damage reduction kind of equates to health and recovery, except you're able to deal with gravity style based attacks more easily. But the nice thing about it is that all they have to do is hit 6 or more combos to achieve that damage reduction aspect. So that is a big deal. Like, you have beautiful amounts of damage reduction basically just comboing a board. You don't have to combo that well. Making 6 combos from a given board is almost always possible, unless you have like jammers and poisons as well as terrible distribution sprinkled in. Like, again, it's almost impossible not to. So it gives that kind of level of consistency. And then their full multiplier is achieved via matching 4 plus connected fire or water orbs depending on which Odin you're using. So that 156 times multiplier is reasonable for the most part, and at this point in time I'd say it's kind of almost average in terms of like how much damage output they're actually pumping out. Like, the thing is, like, at this point in time, like, most leaders are dealing spectacular amounts of damage, so 156 times, while sounding nice, is not as awe-inspiring as it used to be. But the biggest drawback of the Odins, I feel, is that they do not have reliable personal damage awakenings. And this is a big deal because when you are using their teams, you're obviously using 2 leaders. So when you have 2 of your cards only hitting for 156 times, you may be a little stressed for damage output. Yes, some may argue that Void Damage Penetration is a damage augmentation awakening skill, but a given board is not going to be what you're going to be matching for the most part. You're not going to have 9 of those orbs, and you probably will be going for more of a combo or TPA matching style overall, even if you did have those orbs present. So again, your leaders are not contributing that much damage. And if we compare this multiplier to something like Edward, who has a very similar 144 times, Edwards have double 7 combo awakenings, so they're doing 4 times personal damage. So they are going to be possibly eclipsing Odin's overall damage output, which is a big deal, and unfortunately is going to be one big drawback for the Odins. So like I just mentioned, 7 combos seems to be the most universally powerful and beneficial awakening because it does not require any strange or complex patterns. It doesn't require special orb distributions. You just basically combo and deal large amounts of damage. However, Odins are requiring you to actually match 4 plus connected orbs of their primary color, which means that TPA are now able to actually take effect and be meaningful because you actually have to match those. Because generally speaking, if you are matching TPAs, you sometimes miss out on certain combo counts, and it can lower your overall damage output because, again, every card has to have TPAs, and you're most likely not sprinkling in TPAs in your team because most things want 7 combos. But in the Odin's case, you don't have 7 combos by default, so you can go for a more TPA-heavy team. So that means you could potentially run something like Sheet, who has an amazing spread of TPA damage for Blue Odin, and you're going to be doing massive amounts of damage because you have to match that 4 anyways. And that was what the biggest issue with TPA teams was. They didn't have a team that could really capitalize on the awakening itself. But by being forced to match 4 plus connected orbs, TPAs can take effect. Of course, you still can use Rose, but again, TPA is probably going to be more efficient in terms of orb hungriness. So they can be strong leaders, I feel, but I feel like the fact that their own personal damage is lacking is definitely going to hold them back a little bit and keep them out of the elite status along with their active skill, like, while being reasonably strong, at least for their own teams, not being as valuable for the most part. Like, other top tier leaders tend to have a bit stronger active skills, like a little bit higher value, because like they're not removing hazards, not removing locks. Like, it sounds nitpicky and finicky, but it is something to keep in mind, as well as it breaks hearts, so you can't heal while dealing damage. Like, it's small little things like that. In terms of awakenings, they do have 3 skill boosts, full bind immunity, but it's their double void damage penetration awakenings, which makes them quite appealing, and I want to basically talk about that after I just touch upon that their sub potential is kind of low, because, well, subs generally want to have offensive awakenings, and void damage penetration is only situational, so you would only really use the Odins as subs if you're truly desperate for skill boosts, or you really need void damage penetration for the particular team you are running. So, void damage penetration basically allows the owning card to pierce through damage void encounters. So that means things like Gaia Dragon and Zeus Dragon, that a void damage over a certain threshold can now be pierced through. So this has become somewhat invaluable for clearing endgame content because lots of spawns are requiring you to actually have that 3x3 box awaken to pierce through and basically dodge all of their nasty mechanics. But at the same time, any VDP card must have high personal damage in order to be truly effective. So, and that the reason for that is because you're trying to basically one-shot a spawn in one go, and only one of your cards, or maybe two of those who have the VDP Awakenings, are going to be dealing damage, they are expected to deal the full health of the entire boss. So for instance, Zeus Dragon, I think, has 78 odd million health in Arena 3, so that if you're planning to one-shot Zeus Dragon with Void Damage Penetration, that card has to be hitting 78 million or more, and that can obviously be overcome via active skills by elemental board changers, as well as basically having strong personal damage. So at this point in time, Yusuke and Valentine's Day are the two best options for VDP, because they have double 7 combo. In the case of Valentine's Day, they do have 2 TPAs, and those Awakenings enable them to have massive amounts of personal damage with their Void Damage Penetration Awakening. And one may argue that Odins have 2 Void Damage Penetration Awakenings, but their personal damage is going to be lower than both Yusuke and Ne, as well as the fact that they're not going to be contributing damage unless you're making that 3x3 box. So let's say you're playing through a dungeon and you are only not using the Odins as leaders, using them as subs. They won't be contributing much damage on those given teams. But I guess as a saving grace, if you are using, like, say Odin is your best option for Void Damage Penetration, you would run him on his own team as sub leaders, so at least you have a friend. So basically the 2 cards together will be contributing damage, so you have 2 cards that can deal meaningful amounts of damage. So I guess that's kind of his biggest saving grace, is that you are going to be using dual leaders. Again, Yusuke is using themselves as well, but this is like the next best option, I'd say, for budget Void Damage Penetration Awakening. So it is strong, but it's not as powerful unless you're running him as a leader to deal with those particular spawns. So in conclusion, the Odins are significantly improved overall. Like, they were quite lackluster beforehand, and now they've gained significantly more relevance. Of course, this is kind of just, this write-up is being done basically when they were announced / released, so things might change in the future, but I feel that they have at least a reasonable spot in the meta. Not top tier game-breaking overall, but still a lot stronger than they used to be. And it may give players a little bit more hesitation in actually trading them in for rare collab cards in the future. So I like to keep my own Godfest tier, my Godfest exclusive tier list. Again, it's my own personal opinion. Don't take these as absolute truths. As with any tier list, there's obviously certain degrees of bias and or irrelevancy for the average player, because it assumes everything is perfect and all options are available. So for the most part, the Odins do advance up to A, because again, I just explained why they have more merit and value, and then Canna goes from C to B. So no, at this point in time, no Godfest exclusive is particularly terrible. There are those, of course, who have less merit or value overall, but at least nothing is a standout as a bad option. So for the overall Godfest itself, like, it's kind of middle of the road. Like, we have a reasonable amount of distributions of A's and S's, but again, it's nothing special, no bonus rolling rates. Like, it's just not that impressive for the most part. So, oh well. Now, in terms of movement, Canna goes from C to B, and this is because the future Miru evolution will give Canna more relevancy, because Heart Crossing requires a certain degree of orbs as well as cutting down the board space, so it may be challenging to always hit 7+ combos, and because of that, Canna has more value on mirror teams, because you can basically match your Heart Cross, a TPA, and deal very meaningful amounts of damage. Of course, it's not going to be the most incredible card in the world. Mirror teams are strong, but not as top tier as she once was, but at least gives Canna a better home to actually be used on, because again, Canna's base active is not the greatest. She'll probably just carry your gemstone burst inherit, but still, at least it gives her more merit and value. So basically, I just summarized the Godfest. I kind of went out of order. Now, basically, the Godfest exclusive trading post, or the monster exchange system, allows us to trade 4 6-star cards for a collab card of our choice. So in the case of YYH collab, players could, like myself, traded 4 Godfest exclusives in, 6-star Godfest exclusives in, for a Yusuke. So this means that you should never, ever, ever sell your Godfest exclusives anymore, because they are fodder for trading in for what are arguably the strongest cards in the game, because collab cards tend to be the most powerful ones at this point in time. Now, outside of that, Godfest do still have Pantheons and former 5-star Godfest exclusives, but they're no longer highlighted. They just have the regular rolling rates. So technically they're a little harder to roll during Godfest, but you should always roll during Godfest. Don't roll outside of a Godfest, because your chances of being sad are significantly higher. So in terms of the feature cards here, I'm going to be kind of just doing a little quick touch upon the Mesopotamian Pantheon, because I kind of actually failed to do a little review of them beforehand. So They are available during this Godfest, but they're not necessarily strong enough Pantheon to be worth chasing. I have no idea why that's such a big icon. But from the Mesopotamian Pantheon, Gilgamesh is basically a red Fujin. So we love Fujin-style active skills because we can dance through Sopdet, Parvati, Hera Dragon, so on and so forth. But the downside is their secondary benefit is a column of fire orbs. Not the most helpful for the average team, but for Makoto teams who can activate fully off of 5 connected fire orbs, an amazing card to have for those teams. And again, if it's your first Fujin-style active skill, it's a great thing to have for the most part. But unfortunately, this Godfest does not have a Fujin present whatsoever, so that is a little problematic. So if you're trying to get Fujin, this is really not the time to do so because Fujin is unavailable. EA, I'm just going to assume it's like, I have no idea what the pronunciation is, but they're not going to rip you off through loot boxes. Gunna who can do that for you, but they have a +2 combo count active skill, and it can be the fastest charging one due to their skill charge awakening, but that forces you to actually run a rainbow-based team and use them as a sub because their actual offensive awakenings are just 2 TPAs, so again, TPA is not that valuable for the most part, and 2+ combo count is not that great. Remember, Blue Odins could use TPA, but they don't need +2 combo count because they already bring that with their own active skills, so EA is not necessarily that beneficial for the most part. And if you are planning to inherit EA on your various cards, the 15-turn cooldown is significantly longer than other +2 combo count options, so it's just going to be a little lackluster overall. And I can't say their name, but the wood card from this Pantheon spawns 4 wood orbs at random, as well as providing 4 turns of wood skyfalls and 1.5 times recovery for 4 turns. So recovery may feel a little strange overall, and that is generally true, but on this overly sized Vraska icon from the Magic the Gathering collab, the extra recovery can be a little helpful because while this team has 4 times health, they do not have any recovery multipliers. So this can put a little strain on your team. So having the ability to add additional recovery outside of your leader's active skills may be situationally helpful. But again, if you are using their active, make sure you have lots of dark orbs because you may override them and then ruin your activation, and then you're just sad overall. So not the greatest active, but at least may have some value there. In addition to this, Shamash has a 30% gravity and 3-turn bind and awoken bind clear on what is a very long 20-turn cooldown. Their skill charge cannot help offset it, but if you're planning to inherit them, it's way too long. You're better off using something like Green Odin. Like, combining those 2 components is a really strange thing to do. Not many uses or not many situations where you'll need both at the same time. And then lastly, we have Alatu, and they have a Haku-style board changer in that they make red for fire, water, dark orbs, and a 3-turn delay. So combining a board changer and a delay is kind of unusual, but at least it gives you flexibility. Neither one component is necessarily going to be, I should say, it's rare that both components are going to be bad, and each one individually is reasonably strong, and the overall total cooldown isn't too terrible. So for the new Magic the Gathering leader Giara, she can utilize this in both scenarios. The board changer helps her fully activate, and the delay can be situationally helpful. So a reasonable active skill overall, at least for Giara teams, but maybe kind of situational and niche. So as a whole, the Pantheon is alright, but not as game-breaking as something like the ones that feature Nohime and Tachibana. Like, those ones are just significantly stronger. There are just better Pantheons out there. And again, Pantheons tend to play a smaller role in this day and age. In terms of the featured former 5-star Godfest exclusives, the Light Metatron and Red Sonya are mostly for their weapon assist. Zuo, I guess, as well, but Dark Row farming is kind of weird. Sharius is very situational, and Balboa is 100% defense break, again, used seldomly from time to time. So as I already mentioned, collabs tend to be stronger, like the stronger thing compared to Godfest for a more veteran player. So if you have a much more developed monster box, collabs tend to be a better place to spend your magic stones because it will add more depth to your box compared to regular Godfest because it will provide you with cards that you cannot replicate anywhere else. But on that same train of thought, if you're a newer player, you really need to actually solidify your monster box and kind of lay the foundation. And that's usually done through Godfest and just Pantheon cards. So again, what is more valuable to you is based on your own monster box and individual needs. But again, just to kind of stereotype, newer players have more benefit from Godfest and the Pantheons that come out as well, whereas more veteran or more diverse and deep monster boxes prefer collabs because you own most of the Pantheon cards already. So, in conclusion, this Godfest is mediocre overall. Like, it's not particularly amazing. Like, I There are... Whoops, that should have... I don't know why that canvas was there. But, like, for the most part, like, this Godfest is not that great overall. Like, nothing is that special. Nothing is that stand out. I would honestly just save your magic stones. But, of course, with that being said, the decision of whether or not to roll rests upon your own individual needs. So, again, if you are planning to roll, how much do you plan on rolling, and who do you actually hope on acquiring? Hopefully you all have a fantastic day. Wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.